Welcome to the More Time, More Money and More Wealth mini podcast for business owners, brought to you by Wow Advisors Group. This podcast is dedicated to business owners who would like to work smarter and not harder, earn significantly more income and create astonishing wealth. Now, let me introduce you to our host today, Hitesh Mohanlal.
Hello and welcome to podcast number 12 for those business owners who want to work less, earn more and create some significant wealth. Today I want to talk about the Iranian war, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, how is the war related to working less, earning more and creating wealth? Well, in a way it doesn't, and in a way it does. If you've looked at your investment balances recently or in the last couple of weeks, you've seen that they've been decimated because of what's happening in the war. And it also has the potential effect of affecting your income too. So it is kind of relevant. All right. But I'm going to give you a little bit of background before you can understand what it really means for you, what you should do, and should you panic, buy or even sell some of the things that you have invested in. So let's go back history, okay? Historically, the West has a very, very poor result when it comes to regime change. So what Trump did was, when he went into the war with Iran, he said, look, there's a credible threat that there's going to be some kind of attack from Iran. And then he said, we need to change the regime as well. And as I said, historically, regime change has been very, very poor when it comes from the Western side. So if you start thinking about what's happened in the past, think of Libya, all right? We had Colonel Gaddafi in Libya. And because we went in all guns blazing and we removed him, right, we didn't actually have any plan or a structure or anybody to take over. We just went in, got rid of him, ran back out, and it caused all kinds of issues within that country, and it's still suffering. Okay. Equally, Iraq, Saddam Hussein, we went in there, all guns blazing, got rid of him. We didn't have a plan to create a new government or do something, and we just left them to it, and again we kind of messed that one up. And finally, if you look at Afghanistan, well, we went in there after 9/11, and the whole objective was to get rid of the Taliban, and yet 25 years later we're in a position where the Taliban is still controlling Afghanistan. So historically we've been really bad at it, and I think we've also messed it up here with Iran too. Okay, so like I said, Trump went in there thinking he's going to get the oil, and I think this is all about oil. This is not about regime change. This is not about what Iran was going to do. I think he thought, I'm going to do a Venezuela where I'll go in there, grab the oil supply, and it'll all be over in a couple of days. There are, however, a couple of key differences between the two. When he went into Venezuela, basically that government just went straight on its knees and said, yes, that's fine, we'll become slaves and have our lives into servitude. Iran doesn't work that way. All right, Iran is in an area and from a regime which basically says, yeah, you can punch us, but we're going to try and punch you back, and we may take more punches than we give out, but we're still going to give them out because we know we can give you a real bloody nose. And what's happened is they've given us a real bloody nose, because what they've done is they've cut off the oil supply. Now, from an American point of view, from Trump's point of view, he thought, well, you know what, Iran only produces 4% of the world's oil supply. So he didn't think, or the administration in the US didn't think this was an issue. One of the things I think they missed was they didn't realize, or they did realize but ignored, the fact that 20% of the world's oil supply comes through this narrow thing called the Strait of Hormuz. And what the Iranians have had is they've had about 20 years to work out how to defend that, and they've done a really, really good job of it, to such an extent that the Americans actually don't know what to do. And I think what's happened is that there was no real plan. Okay, again, all they thought was, we'll go in guns blazing, we'll take it over, and everything will be hunky-dory. What's actually happened is the Iranians have said, get lost. All right, these guys or the Americans are now wondering what to do, and now they're scattergunning. They're trying to solve a problem they hadn't thought about. So we're in this ironic situation where Russia can't sell oil to anybody because there's an embargo put out by the Americans. And what the Russians have done is they are supporting the Iranians to attack effectively the US and allies. And what America's done is they've gone to Russia and said, you know what we'll do is we'll remove this embargo so that you can sell oil now. And that seems to me really, really strange. Why would you go to your enemy and say we're going to help you, knowing that that enemy is also trying to attack you? And that's why I think there isn't a plan there. Secondly, last week, the Americans went to China and said, please, can you help us clear this Strait of Hormuz as well? And you've got to remember, the US has been battering China for a number of years now. And so China's thinking, why are we going to get involved in this? Because we can get the oil from Iran because we don't necessarily are against that regime. So again, no real planning, but Trump needs to do something because he's getting a lot of pressure around the world, and specifically within America as well, because his base, his real MAGA base, is all based around domestic issues like immigration and fixing what is in the US. And so they're thinking, why are we dealing with a country called Iran? So there's a couple of real dynamics in there. But what does it mean really? And we've already seen some of the effects of this war. So last week, interest rates went up in Australia, okay, and that's a direct result of this war, I believe. They will say it's to control inflation, and it is to control inflation, but it's because our oil pricing especially relating to our fuel has actually gone through the roof. So Australia has, I think, the second highest increase in diesel fuel prices in the world, for example, okay, and that could be because of profit making or for whatever reason it's actually gone up a significant amount. And we are now really, really concerned that this increase in fuel is going to cause real inflationary pressures, because Australia imports an awful lot of goods and services, and everything it imports, if it's importing something such as goods, okay, those are all going to go up because freight costs are going to go up, okay? If freight costs go up and costs for transportation go up, specifically from warehousing to shops, for example, so all our groceries get transferred, all the goods get transported by trucks. Now, all of those costs have gone up, so all of our grocery costs, for example, are likely to go up. This is not just about petrol. If we're importing a lot of raw materials, which we do, the pricing for all of that's going to go up. And what that means is we've got some real inflationary pressures. In order to control those inflationary pressures, the Federal Reserve is going to start hacking up interest rates. If we hack up interest rates, it makes your mortgage, my mortgage, and everybody else's mortgages a lot more expensive. It will then start affecting companies and businesses' ability to invest in their business. Okay, so the longer this war goes on, the bigger the issue's going to be. All right. Now, what does that mean specifically for you, apart from knowing that your expenses are going to go up? Okay. Well, there's a couple of things. Firstly, if you've looked at the stock market, you will see over the last 3 weeks or so, it has been absolutely decimated. Okay, and that's purely because the market is looking forward and saying, if this war continues, then we are going to have real problems in this country and other countries around the world. Okay? And if that happens, then what they're saying is the individual companies' abilities to make profit also goes down, and then the stock market goes down. Okay? Is it going to affect things like residential homes, houses and property? At the moment, nobody knows. I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows. But it's likely that the housing in particular may be protected in many ways simply because we have demand that outstrips supply in certain areas. And that alone will keep it going. But as soon as that demand sort of dries up with higher interest rates and cost of living pressures, then it does have the ability to affect pricing of property. Okay. Now, does that mean you sell your shares? Does that mean you sell some of your investments? And the answer is it all depends. Okay. If you are a pensioner about to retire and pull out a large chunk of your superannuation, it's a real big problem. Okay. If, however, you're a little bit like me, who has no intention of pulling out any investments whatsoever because you don't need to, then it's not really an issue. And that's because despite everything that happens in the stock market, you need to always look at the stock market, and in fact any investment, as a long-term thing. So if you're looking at it in the long term always suggests that despite shares going up and down and world wars and Vietnam wars and financial crisis and Ukraine war and now the Iranian war, somehow we always get through it. And that's been going on and been happening since pretty much the 1900s, when the Australian stock market really kind of got into play. So if you look at the graph for the Australian stock market, you can see all these wars and you'll see all these dips, but overall the market goes up. So what you can do is you can say, well, look, this is a long-term thing. Yes, I don't feel very happy that I feel poorer because my share portfolio or my investment portfolio has gone down, but because I'm in this for a long-term basis, then I'm going to trust that in the long term the market is going to recover, because that is what has always happened. So that's what I would say on your investments. Remain calm, keep an eye on it, but I wouldn't get involved into panic selling just yet. In respect of housing, well, we've already discussed that, and I don't think housing is a lot less liquid. It takes longer to get rid of, and this war, I think, will only become a real issue if it continues for a number of months. And I just feel that the Americans will deal with this quicker and not let it run for a number of months. Now, that may mean they get into negotiations with the Iranians. It may mean that they pull out. It may mean that they go all guns blazing and really take over the whole thing. Whatever he decides to do, there are going to be serious consequences for all of those. All right? And we just don't know. The longer it continues, the more damage it will do to the Australian economy, the more damage it's going to do to the world economy. In terms of your business income, what does it mean? Well, as I said, for some businesses, it's not going to have a dramatic effect. For others, it will. If you're importing a lot of things or you're selling goods, the chances are within the next few months, your costs are going to go up, because the freight costs are going to go up. So bear that in mind. Even get your customers ready to and tell them, look, at the moment it's pretty fluid, but the chances are pricing may go up and we may have to increase our pricing. Okay? Have in the back of your mind, if you do need to increase prices, how much is that going to be? Okay? Be prepared. Think about it rather than having to worry about it when the crunch happens. Okay, so that's what I would do on an income front. I wouldn't and I wouldn't really do anything drastic. So don't go out and spend a huge amount on equipment or machinery or anything like that. It's just too uncertain at the moment for you to go out and spend lots and lots of money. Okay, just keep everything stable. Just keep it ticking over, and then when it's right, then jump in. From an investment point of view, if your money is in the stock market or in investments like that, you may wish to speak to your financial planner, but the history suggests that things will recover, and that's probably the route it's going to go. But again, speak to your professional planner. And that's about it regarding this war. I think, again, this will only get solved once we solve that oil situation on the Strait of Hormuz. Once that has been solved, things will unravel and come back to normal. The longer that remains in place, that oil supply is stuck, we will have real problems. I hope that was useful for you. Thank you, and have a great day.